During the pandemic, I had to attend my medical internships for 2 to 4 weeks. My mind was constantly on low battery since I'm a frontliner. My body was on autopilot whenever I walked home. I had enough spatial awareness not to get hit by a car, but wouldn't understand you if you walked up to me. Walking in my uniform, I was plugged into my headphones and walked past the apartment blocks near my house. A short distance away, I noticed someone on the ground. An older man in his 60s, with a beer belly in an undershirt and shorts, lying face down on the ground. I was surprised he laid there undisturbed and was about to go check on him. A hard tap on my shoulder scared the crap out of me. A slightly annoyed policeman was speaking to me, and it took 3 tries before I registered what he said. Apparently, the old man had just jumped from the apartment across from mine and was pronounced dead on sight. I happened to walk past the perimeter that the police were cordoning off. I was early enough that they hadn't blocked the area with tape yet. The policeman had been trying to get my attention to not walk that way. I was surprised. The man didn't look like he was injured at all. No blood or bruises. Still pink in the hands too. Being too tired to respond, but equally shocked, I murmured an apology and walked around the perimeter after being ushered out. After a long break and processing what happened, I went on my merry way until a little encounter the next morning. My doorstep looks down over the area where the man had fallen. The morning was silent, and the sunrise glazed the space in grey shadows. It was too early for anyone to be walking around. My newly rested eyes registered a small pot-belly man looking my way. He noticed my uniform and waved a morning hello to me. I pretended not to look. This happened to me in the past when I was around 9, and I always used to hang out with my oldest cousin. He was 7 back then, as we were pretty separated at that time before everything changed when he turned 18. I was spending a night at my granny's house, as I used to be her personal dog sitter, and he decided to come hang out with me before he suggested a good idea to go into the nearest forest, which was almost next to her house. We were living in a medium-sized city, but the forest is almost always near buildings at some parts or areas. Around 10 or 11 p.m, just to walk around the edge of the forests, since it would be foolish to go deep into the forest that late. I nodded and told him that it would be a good idea, since we were bored and feeling adventurous. So we headed out and just started to walk towards the edge of the forest and have a small adventure. But that didn't last even half an hour before the weird things started to happen. I remember when I was standing against a big tree and looking just in front of me, while my cousin was near by his side, like 6 to 7 inches away from me, and seemed to be searching something, which is still unclear what exactly. But when I was looking in front of me, I saw red eyes staring at me out of nowhere. But they were far away from us, and I turned towards my cousin and asked if he's seeing what I was seeing right now. But he just ignored my question, so I turned back to look at the eyes, and they were closer than before. I blinked a few times, but of course I couldn't see anything around them, and they were not getting closer. I only saw trees, and I turned back to him, asked the same question, but he kept ignoring me. So I turned one last time to look at them, just to see that they were getting closer and closer. I just kept watching them, feeling a little bit afraid at this moment, and I swear that they started to come towards me, even when I didn't look away. So I just grabbed from his hand and just ran as quickly as I could with him, until we saw the street lamps. After that, I've never seen or experienced the same thing ever again. The funniest thing is that I never heard them letting out any kind of noises when approaching, even if there would have been a lot of branches on the ground, and it was the size of a wolf or dog. And this thing has been bothering me, and just made me question myself, like, what would have happened if I didn't run away? What if I would have just stood there to find out what that thing was? Even if it has been 16 years since it happened, it stayed in my memory. So this occurred about a year ago. I had to walk to my bus stop on the way to school. Usually I'm driven, as it's about half an hour's walk away, and my bus leaves at 7. But I had to walk up today. Anyways, I'm in the southern hemisphere, Australia specifically,
placing this in the middle of winter when it was still pitch black outside. As I just got to the end of my driveway where the road starts, I saw someone walking on the other side of the road. Their body was dead black with no facial features or anything at all. This scared the shit out of me as it was. Even more so as I live on a back country road with no one else around, meaning it wasn't just someone going for a walk. Terrified and hoping it was just someone going for a walk all the way out there for whatever reason, I tried to speak to them and just say hello. When they completely ignored me, I got out my phone and shone my torch on them. As I did, they disappeared, starting where the torch was shining, then altogether. That was enough for me to nope the fuck out of there, and I started walking back towards my house. But I walked backwards, facing where I saw the entity, as I was far too scared to turn around. As I did, it came back into view, but it was much larger, 3 or 4 meters tall than before. It was the size of a normal person, and I could see it glowing as it got larger. It continued to follow me until I got back inside of my house where I just stayed. I ended up getting my mum to drive me to my bus stop instead, as I was far too scared to go outside and walk down there again. That's all there was to the encounter, but there's some other things worth mentioning, and things I should probably note. This was a one-off encounter. I've never experienced or seen anything similar before or since. In the weeks following the encounter at night, I heard 2 people conversing, but couldn't make out any words, whilst I was either the only one home or everyone else asleep. It was ruled out by a doctor that it was a psychosis or something similar. When I encountered it, I immediately had the most fear I've ever felt before, but I wasn't frozen in place and could still move. I also felt a general sense of dread common with stickman sightings. It seems to have multiple sides, but be 2D. Like a spirit from an old Doom game. Not pixelated though. It was dead silent when I saw it, but I think I may have heard it walking. It wasn't gliding, and I could see it bobbing slightly as it walked. It did not look at me until I started retreating, when it was staring at me and coming towards me quick. It had no facial features of any sort. I didn't notice any air illusions around it that I can remember. It seemed more bulky than a normal stickman. It was more like what you would see on a bathroom male or female sign. For a few weeks after the encounter, I heard people walking around my house, changing from walls to ceiling to floor. This wasn't rats or anything. It was definite human footsteps. I was fully awake and alert at the time. I didn't get the sense that I shouldn't be seeing it or anything. If anything, it more felt like I was meant to see it. I know what I saw, and that it was real and not an illusion from the light or anywhere else. That's all I can think of for now. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer. I'm also not a bigger believer of the paranormal, and typically find it mostly untrue, and I've never really believed in ghosts or anything similar. However, I still have no possible way to explain what I saw. So to start with a small background to my story, I'd like to say that my mother's side of the family, especially her and my grandmother, have experienced a lot of paranormal experiences during their lives. Some small ones that are probably explainable by logical things, and some very scary, almost unbelievable ones that I wouldn't believe if they didn't come directly from them. So since I was a kid, I always had a passion for paranormal things. I would always ask my family members to tell me stories about frightening things they've experienced. I would watch paranormal story times and read paranormal stories on the internet, all the time, for example. But I never looked forward to experiencing anything paranormal myself. I wasn't scared of it, but I just didn't want to. So I never played Ouija or did anything to cause paranormal things happening to me. Now, a few years ago, I was 14 or 15. I study in the French system, so we basically have 2 weeks of vacation every 2 months. It all happened during my 2 weeks vacation in April, during my last year of middle school. As the 15-year-old teenager that I was, I spent the night watching Netflix, YouTube, checking my social media and talking to friends. I slept way after the sunrise every day, like maybe at 6 or 7 a.m, something like that. Because I slept so late and woke up so late too, about 5 p.m., my rhythm was completely fucked up. So I was always washing my face, brushing my teeth, and using the bathroom very late at night. One night, I went to the bathroom I share with my sister to wash my face before going to sleep. It was around 3 a.m., and keep in mind, I only used the bathroom sink. I didn't use the toilet. Right after I finished washing my face and brushing my teeth, I started walking towards the bathroom door to go back to my room when I heard noises coming from my toilet. It sounded very, very weird, just like multiple children whispering at the same time. But I wasn't scared yet, and I thought I was making scenarios and that the noise was just a problem with the pipe. So I moved closer to the toilet and approached my ear to the back of the toilet, where all the piping is, only to hear the same thing but louder. I can swear to you that I heard in the pipes of my toilet at 3 a.m. voices of multiple children chatting together quietly and indistinctively. I didn't hear any words, just a quiet hubbub. I'm Muslim, so after experiencing that, I just went back to my room and read Quran before falling asleep. I don't know why, but I wasn't very scared. Later that day, I told my mom and sister what happened, and they just told me I was paranoid and that it was just water running down or a problem with the pipes. But I knew, and I still know what I heard. 2 days later, I was taking a shower in the same bathroom. At this point, I've completely forgotten what had happened. At around midnight, I think. When I got out of the shower, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw many little red scratches all around my torso. They didn't hurt at all, but they were very noticeable. And I, at the time, didn't have nails long enough to scratch myself that much without noticing it. I even tried to scratch myself to see what it would look like, and it didn't look like the scratches I had. And it wasn't caused by hot water, because since I've been a kid, my grandmother always told me not to use hot water at night. So when I showered at night, I showered with room temperature water. Of course, it scared the shit out of me. And I rushed to my mom to tell her what had just happened. She reassured me by telling me there must be a logical explanation. But deep down, I think she was scared too, because she told me to pray, to stop using the bathroom and especially water late at night, and to put the Quran in my room before going to sleep. At this point, I was horrified, and I used the guest's bathroom instead of mine, and I never went there late at night. It lasted a week or so, and then I started to use my bathroom again. Nothing happened for a few days until one night. It was 9 or 10 p.m., not very late, and I was in my bathroom washing my face, brushing my teeth, etc. The usual night routine. Now, as I already said, I share that bathroom with my sister, who hasn't experienced anything weird in it so far. And that night, she knocked on the bathroom door because she wanted to use it. I told her I was almost done and that she'll have to wait. A few minutes after that, I heard a laugh behind the bathroom door. It was kind of a creepy, devilish laugh, and I asked, through the door, my sister why she was laughing. She didn't answer. So I asked again, and she still didn't respond. I then slammed the door open, and there was no one there. I went to the living room only to find my sister talking with my mother, with the TV turned off. I started shouting at my sister and telling her that she wasn't funny, that she knew I was scared of that bathroom and a prank was just dumb and mean. I really thought she was pranking me. She didn't even understand what I was talking about, and same for my mom. So I explained to them what just happened, and they both swore it wasn't them. They looked scared, and until this day, there's no logical explanation for that laugh. My phone was in my bedroom, and there wasn't any video playing on it. Even if it did, I couldn't hear it from the bathroom. The living room TV was turned off, and my mom and sister were talking and not laughing. And once again, I wouldn't have heard the laugh if it came from the living room. As I said, this happened a few years ago, and since that time, nothing else happened in that bathroom, except 3 days ago. And this is what made me want to post about my story. My sister wanted to take a shower about midnight, and when she entered the bathroom, she saw our cat in it, growling at nothing. My sister told me about it, went back to her room, and waited for the next morning to shower. There's a hiking trail near Chatsworth Park, on the northwest side of the valley, next to Los Angeles. It's well known for being adjacent to Corriganville, which is close to Spahn Ranch. It's essentially called the Manson Hills. This is where Charles Manson and his followers used to hang out. If you end up hiking there, it's not too exciting. You may see a few bobcats and red-tailed hawks. This fact is very inconsequential to the story. It's still relevant. We used to skip class at Canoga Park High School and hike in the hills. We'd smoke weed and drink without fear of being busted by local law enforcement, because it was so far out of the way of LAPD's jurisdiction. My buddy Gail used to talk of seeing strange creatures and figures, but we would always think it was because he was high or messed up when he hiked the hills. There are also several homeowners that have property up there. It was known as a safe place to party. One night, when we were walking up the path near the base of the trail, we saw several hooded figures. These figures were holding lanterns and walking very slowly up the path. Being so comfortable with the trails that we've used so many times, we thought nothing of it. Until we decided to go up over the ridge and follow them. They suddenly disappeared. Anyone who's been up in the hills here knows that there is a considerable amount of wildlife, even though it's next to the city. It became really quiet, and we all had the feeling that we had to turn back. I want to stress that during daylight, this trail would have been no problem, but at that moment, I had the fight or flight feeling. We felt like there was a general danger for our lives. I've never run so fast down a trail in my life. Once we reached the dark trailhead at the bottom, Gail looked up and pointed at the ridge above us and screamed, "Dude, what the fuck?" We all looked up and saw what I can only describe as a really tall man that was pitch black. No noise, no reaction to our presence. We left, and then we decided to go another spot to hang out. Late night, up Stunt Road. I've been to the park since, but never after dark. It was closed down for a couple of years due to lead being found in the hills, and has since been reopened. To start off, we've lived here for about 5 years. There are not too many nights where it's quiet. We have friends over, and we're often up playing video games to the early morning hours. It started a few years after we moved in. Most of the activity happens around 2 to 4 a.m., especially when just one of us is in the apartment. I have a perfect view of the kitchen near the front door. If anyone passes between that space, I can see it from my bed. Around the golden hour, sometimes I'll see a person pass that space in the dark. It's even happened when one of us is asleep on the couch in the living room with the glow of the TV projecting on the kitchen. It's never a definite shape, only a shadow or something moving across that space. There was this one 4th of July weekend about 2 years ago that really hit me. The light was on, I was in my bed, and I definitely saw someone come through the front door and pass into the living room. Thinking it was my friend coming home early from Las Vegas, I went to the living room and said, "Hey man, I thought," only to find no one. I immediately got freaked out and got chills. Even though I'm a grown man, I decided to close and lock my door and get under the covers. After a good half hour of silence and watching Star Trek, the door popped and swung open. I have to admit, a little bit of pee came out of me. Other than that, it's quiet, but every once in a while we'll hear steps in the kitchen on the cheap linoleum, and no one will be there. So for the past several months, I've encountered a very strange phenomena. Every night I sit on my back porch and look at the stars. Back in April, I was doing just that. It was around 10 p.m. and I was sitting on the top step. I found Venus in the sky and I was mesmerized by its constant red flaring from the solar radiation. There were 3 stars surrounding Venus, one to the bottom left, one to the top right, and one to the bottom right. As I was staring at the planet, I noticed that the star at the bottom right began to move. I've been looking in the same point space for a solid 5 minutes before it started to move. It went up and up, gradually getting faster and faster. Now, to me, it looked like it was going up, but I was looking south, so it may have been moving north, but from my position, it looked as if it was travelling straight up. After 2 minutes of watching this object get farther/closer to me, it disappeared into the black abyss. I know what you're thinking. Stars can't just decide to travel away from their respective solar system. And you're right, but something very, very strange happened tonight at 9:30. It's a very clear sky tonight, and I can see millions of stars in my sparsely populated neck of the woods. As I was watching Venus flash its brilliant red colours, I noticed that the exact same star was in the exact same position. To the bottom right-hand side, I watched it intently, looking to either side of it to help my eyes identify movement. And sure enough, after 10 minutes of manic staring and anticipation, it began to travel up. The hairs on the back of my neck and my arms stood up so fast, it's as if they were trying to rip themselves out of their follicles. I got an incredibly uneasy feeling in my stomach. There was no flashing, no sound, nothing to identify it as a plane. And planes that don't have VTOL capabilities can't just chill in the air. And I've never ever seen a plane travel this fast. It must have been going Mach 12 or 13, literally the fastest thing I've seen in my life. And it accelerated from stationary to extremely fast instantaneously. By the time I stood up to get a better look of where it was going, it was gone, completely vanished. I was sitting on the top step looking up at the sky, completely stunned by what I just saw. I knew I wasn't imagining it anymore. I lit up a cigarette and smoked half of it in 3 hits. I washed over the banister and looked back up. Oh my fucking god, slipped from my lips. There was an entire fleet of these stars that I've been looking at for over an hour, moving in the same direction as the first one. I counted 26 consecutively before I succumbed to my gut feeling and went inside. I do not live near an Air Force base or any other military base or outpost. I do not live anywhere close to an airport. The same stars returned to exactly where they were the next night after my experiences. It doesn't happen all the time. I have no logical explanation for any of this. I pulled my phone out to try and record what was happening, but it was so far away and the light was so dim that my camera couldn't capture anything. If I have to invest in a legit camera for nighttime sky photography, I will. This isn't fake. This isn't made up. This is reality. I've been living with my boyfriend since March. We live in an apartment, so you can pretty much hear everything because it's kind of small. And a few little things have happened. Like feeling like someone or something is watching me. Things falling. Keys moving when we're laying down and doors closing. I choose to ignore it because I've been dealing with shit like this for a long time. And usually ignoring it, for me at least, will make it stop or not engage any further than the little things. Then yesterday happened, and I'm honestly a little scared now. So I'm taking a nap in our room, and my boyfriend says he's running out to do something, and I go back to sleep. I guess like 15 minutes later, I hear doors open and close, and we usually make noises at each other, so he starts making the noises we do when he walks in. I was way too tired to do it back, so I just went back to sleep. I'm not that much of a heavy sleeper, so I'm aware of what's happening around me. So he walks in the room, and it sounds like he drops his jacket on the ground, and I kind of open my eyes. And I'm awake now because the vibe that I'm getting from him is just not good. Like I feel scared that he's in the room because I know he's angry at me, but something didn't feel right. I don't know how to explain it. I know I wasn't dreaming because I moved my fingers and my arm a little, even kicked my leg a little to make sure it wasn't sleep paralysis or lucid dreaming. I looked at the time too. It was around 5 p.m. He exhales angrily and leaves the room. I'm still pretty tired, so I just go back to sleep, but I don't know how long it was. My eyes shoot back open because I hear the dishwasher swing open, and he violently starts putting the dishes away. I do the same again with my arm and leg to make sure I'm actually awake. I got scared again because he doesn't get angry at me like this, and I was thinking in my head like I was going to do the dishes when I wake up. But I guess you want to argue when I wake up. And a couple nights ago, he got a little irritated with me because I didn't do the dishes. Nothing serious though, just a little bickering. So this is me thinking he's extra mad about it. I sat there pretty scared, then fell back asleep. I guess another 20 minutes go by, and I hear the door open and close again. I'm thinking, what the hell, did he leave again and not tell me? But I don't feel scared this time. I hear him put his stuff down and the TV turns on. I waited a little bit to come out and I'm like, hey. And he's like, hey, happy to see me, give me a kiss. And I'm like, okay. I go and open the dishwasher and they're still in there. I kind of give him a look and I said, are these the clean ones? And he's like, yeah, can you do them please? I asked how long he's been back and he said, about 10 or 15 minutes. Are you okay? So I did the dishes and brushed it off. But then I really started thinking about it. Whatever this thing is, it knows a lot about us. It knows that we go into a thing about the dishes. It knows the noises we make at each other. And I swear to God, it sounded just like him. It's like it knows how to lure me to it, basically. And this isn't the first time it's talked to me in my boyfriend's voice. I was talking to a friend on FaceTime one night, and I was getting a drink out of the fridge, and heard my name softly say, hi Puff. It's my nickname he has for me. And it sounded like it was right behind me. And I jumped and I was like, you scared the And he wasn't there. I looked at my friend and told her and I was like, what the fuck? And another time, I was sitting on the couch and I heard it again. Hi Puff. And I looked up and I walked back into the bedroom and he was sound asleep. And one night was really scary because I heard this noise. It didn't sound human at all. It came from the bedroom where I was on the couch and my boyfriend was sleeping in the bedroom. I waited a few seconds and darted back there because I wasn't about to leave my boyfriend with whatever the fuck it was. He was sound asleep and nothing there, of course. I woke him up and I asked if he was okay. He was. And he even told me one night, he said that I came into the bedroom and stood on his side of the bed and apparently said, why are you sweating? Which never fucking happened. I did come in later and took some blankets off him and said, you're sweating. But not in a rude way. And he said, I know you said that earlier. And I was like, no. And he said, yeah, you did. You were standing on my side of the bed for some reason. And I said, I didn't know. And he was like, oh, okay. And another night I walked back there and whispered something to him and he walked out. Apparently whatever it is has impersonated me too. He also said he was sleeping one night and felt something sit on the end of his bed. He quickly turned the TV on and didn't tell me till the next day. Now the most I've experienced there was about like 3 something in the morning, and I would hear what sounded like 2 ladies talking. I didn't feel scared though, more confused because it didn't sound like my mom or the boyfriend's daughter. I couldn't make out what they were saying, and everyone for a fact was sleeping. I kind of thought I was crazy, until my boyfriend stayed over at 3 something in the morning. We were awake. I went downstairs to get some water and I heard it again. I stopped and listened for a few minutes, still not hearing what they were saying. I shook it off and went back upstairs, and as soon as I got into my room, my boyfriend was like, did you hear talking? And I was like, yes. Sort of relieved because I wasn't crazy. And neither of us felt scared that we heard talking, knowing it couldn't have been my mom or her boyfriend's daughter. Now my mom's story. So she called me this past Saturday, and she told me something happened. Now mind you, my mom sleeps with earplugs, and she never really hears anything, and the AC that's in her room is kind of obnoxious. She's dead asleep with the earplugs, and she starts hearing footsteps in the hallway, as if a man is walking with heavy boots. She's sleeping away from the bedroom door. She takes out her earplugs, and she already feels nervous hearing this. When you go to my mom's bedroom door, there's a single step you take to get into the room. Whatever the fuck it is, takes a step down into her room. She's so terrified, she hides under the covers. She said that it slowly walked to her side of the bed and she could just feel it, staring at her. And then it walked over to her boyfriend's side of the bed. I don't know how the fuck he didn't wake up. And it sort of walks back to each side of the bed, I think 1 or 2 more times, until my mom finally got the courage to say, "Go away. I don't want you here." From under the covers, poor thing. The next thing she said made my heart fall out of my ass. She said it walked back over to her door, and it was like it took its shoes off and continued walking around to each side of her fucking bed. She's literally sweating under these covers. She's literally stuck with fear. When it finally left, she woke her boyfriend up and she told him what happened. Of course, he's a non-believer, but he still said not to say anything to his daughter. She just turned 18 and she's fragile, and my mom agreed. She calls the old owners of the house. It was like 5:30 in the morning, but she didn't give a fuck. She asked if they experienced anything, and the son said that he has heard someone walking up and down the stairs, walking in the hallways late at night. Basic shit for ghosts. The next day, my mom's boyfriend's daughter looks at my mom and says, "I gotta tell you, something happened last night." Her heart dropped. So the daughter wears glasses and she puts them on a nightstand. She says that when she was sleeping, she heard her glasses shake around on a nightstand. And she also froze because she didn't want to see it either, I guess. My mom still never told her what she experienced. But the next night, they all slept in the living room. They got sage and went to all the rooms in the house and opened the windows. I'm going to find out tomorrow if anything else happened. What happens when it never leaves, though? Does anyone have suggestions on what to do if it comes back? I feel so bad, because the way my mom was talking, she could barely tell me without taking moments to finish a sentence. So I finally talked my friend into moving from Seattle to Vegas. We decided to split it into 2 parts. The first one last week, moving her stuff in a rented SUV, since we both had some time, so we decided to take the trip on all the back roads. We stayed at a mineral springs resort in the middle of nowhere of Oregon. That was amazing. On the second day, we got up to drive to Vegas. We took US 50, which is known as the loneliest highway in America. So I'll admit before this, it was 8 to 10 hours before we had any human contact. I'm a former over-the-road trucker and a US veteran, so I'm used to traveling to different places and being in new surroundings every day. But it also taught me to listen to my instincts. Let me tell you, they came in loud and clear. While on this trip, a few hours away from Vegas, we stopped to get gas, and as we rolled into the place, I just looked aged and very dated. My friend decided to get gas. I walked inside to look at the place and get some snacks. I can honestly say, I can't point to any one thing that was wrong, but the feeling that overcame me was indescribable. It basically told me that this place was the phrase I would use as out of place. And if I wanted to leave or be able to, I needed to go right now. Now, I'll admit this could be my own experience, and maybe because I had such a bad feeling, I was imagining things. But the minute I decided to leave without buying anything, or even using the restroom, I swear everybody in the place started looking at me. And I don't just mean the employees, but the patrons. So I walked quickly to my car, told my friend that if she believed in instincts, we should just get in the car and leave right now. We did, and we didn't breathe easy until we were 10 miles away from that place. The following is my account of what happened in the woods while hiking a couple days ago. After lots of frustrating research, I haven't come any closer to explaining my experience. Hopefully somebody who's had a similar experience will know what they're talking about stumbles upon this. Tuesday afternoon, I decided to take advantage of the nice weather and go for a little hike. I wanted to explore a nature preserve I had only previously explored briefly. This nature preserve happened to be nestled between a cemetery, church and school, and mental health hospital. After about 30 minutes of uneventful walking in the woods, I came across a slightly developed area. Tucked down a hill and in the middle of the forest, I was shocked to find a paved area and a couple isolated concrete walls. A feeling of adventure and discovery took over, and I instantly became excited to explore. When I stepped close to the paved area, things started to change. I started to feel a little uneasy, but didn't pay much attention to it. When I made it to the paved area, I became confused. There was an empty metal chair sitting in the middle of the clearing on the concrete. Part of me was fascinated, as I thought this looked cool and creepy. I snapped a quick picture tool to capture the moment. After staring for a minute, I decided to investigate the chair. However, I again got an uneasy feeling when I got closer to the chair. Due to this, I decided it would be best to not explore that area today. I slowly turned and began to walk off as I quietly said, "This place is creepier than I remembered." This is when my experience occurred. Almost like someone was responding to me, I heard a loud and direct, "Nobody likes it here." I quickly whipped around to scan for the person. Based on the voice, it would have been about a 5 to 8-year-old boy. However, when I turned around, there was nobody to be found. The likely explanation would have just been some kid playing in the woods. This doesn't add up though. There was only one path in and out of the area, and I was standing on it. I also didn't see another person the whole time I was there. The absence of parents or any real route in or out suddenly hit me. My concern quickly changed to fear. I took a last look, only to see nothing before I started sprinting up the path and out the woods. I eventually caught my breath, but still had no explanation. Even after I heard the voice, there was no movement that I would have expected to hear from a person. I've never had anything close to a paranormal encounter before, and I've always been pretty skeptical. However, now, I don't know what to think. I can't rationalize the voice or situation at all. Historical research hasn't given me any special leads. I used to sleep in the master bedroom of my house. Keywords, used to. This is the experience that made me move rooms and become uncomfortable going up there. I still live with my mum and dad. We used to have a cat by the name of Comet when we moved into the house we currently live in. Problem is, he had a sickness of the liver and didn't live past 1 year old. This was when he was getting awful, so we were trying anything to help him and keep him around. So I put him on our screened-in porch so we could get some air. I did this around sundown in the early summertime, so I'll say 8:30. And then I went to bed. I awoke to a strange feeling in the night, but I didn't open my eyes. I was more or less half asleep, half awake, but not paralyzed. I could still move. I tossed and turned a little until I felt something climb into bed with me. I reach out to it and feel the oh-so-familiar coat of Comet. The mass was the same size as him, and its hours sounded like him, so I thought it was him. I stopped petting it, and I felt the mass jump off my bed. I cracked open my eyes and searched for the light. Once the room was lit, I hopped out of bed and looked around my room, and there was no cat to be seen, and my door was shut, like it should be. So I thought a Comet had hid under my bed, which was his favourite spot. I walked downstairs and into my parents' bedroom. They were both up and scrolling through their phones like they commonly do at night when they can't sleep. Okay, which one of you brought Comet in? Mom looked at my dad with a confused look on her face. We didn't. Did you let him in and forget about it? I was certain I didn't, so I went back upstairs and looked at my bed. Sure enough, no cat. A day or two later, Comet died of liver failure when we brought him to the vet. To this day, I don't know how to explain what happened. My door was shut when I left to talk to Mum and Dad, so even if Comet was up there, he couldn't have left the room. To this day, I still wonder if that was my dying cat or something pretending to be my dying cat. I was 22 years old and just moved in with my cousin. We had a band, so of course we tried to party hard. That being said, we always had a house full of bandmates hanging out. One spring night, we were done practicing and chilling in the living room. I was sitting on the couch across from my cousin, who was passed out in his recliner. All of a sudden, he springs up from his recliner, looks at me and says, "We've got to go to the train trestle now." The train trestle was an old abandoned railroad tracks that led to a wooden, still intact wooden bridge over the river. We grew up in a small South Carolina town and there wasn't much to do, so we would go hang out at places like that to drink and hang out. Back to that night. When my cousin sprang up and said we've got to go to the trestle now, I thought maybe he was joking or really baked. But he kept saying it and was dead serious. The trestle was 30 minutes away and it had to be after midnight, but this was so crazy that I had to go. So we started heading out the door and all our friends outside smoking asked where the hell we were going. I told them what my cousin said and they couldn't pass it up either. So around 6 of us piled into my cousin's 93 red Ford Bronco and headed out. The 30-minute ride to the trestle was completely silent, except for a few drunken, "What the hell are we doing?" My cousin kept saying, "I don't know. I just feel like we gotta go." We turned down the gravel road that leads to the abandoned train trestle. Follow it up for like half a mile. Make a left turn and we're looking at the trestle, about at our 11 o'clock vantage point. We all get out of the Bronco and walk towards the bridge. We don't even make it 10 steps when a faint light appears in the distance, and it keeps getting brighter. The light keeps coming, and now I'm crossing the bridge. I remember one of my friends fearfully asking, "What the hell is going on?" The light keeps getting brighter and brighter, and then I finally comprehend what I'm seeing. It's a train. The train was bright white/grey, completely silent and passing from our right to left within 20 yards. Then out of nowhere, the train slows to a stop. At this point, I'm in such disbelief that all I can do is stare. I know I sound crazy, but I swear the next thing that happens is people start walking off of the train. They're wearing what appeared to my 20-year-old brain to be old clothing. I remember top hats on the men who were grabbing the bags and women in big dresses departing the cars. Next, it gets a little fuzzy because it's been 17 years, but the people just vanished and the completely silent train starts moving again and slowly disappears to our left. After the train disappeared, we were in complete shock and the reality sets in. We start freaking out and trying to figure out what the hell just happened. I can't remember who yelled it, but someone screamed, "Let's get the fuck out of here." We all bolted to the Bronco and tore out of there. 17 years later, and I remember it like it was yesterday. When I was little, my mother used to find me talking to what seemed to be the wall. Yet I would tell her "old man mommy." It was always friendly and none of us feared it. Mum used to think it was her grandfather or someone from my father's side. It went away when I turned 7. As life went on, I was 8. My father passed away, and since then, I've always seen stuff. I feel he's watching over me. It was only a few months since my father passed, and weird stuff was already happening. My father had this very distinct aftershave, and I had a bottle of it on my desk as a way for me to remember him. I woke up one night around 10 or 11 p.m. after I went to sleep at around 8 or 9. I have a loft bed, and I always kept my desk lamp on. I wake up to hear stuff move, and I see a figure of a man under my desk. I freeze. I can't move or speak. I see his reflection on the wall in front of my light. I see him moving around, yet I feel safe. I hear the sound of the aftershave bottle being used, and then I can smell it. After sitting there for a while, it feels as if he looked at me. Looked at the wall and right into my eyes. I get this sense of happiness and fear at the same time, but I didn't feel scared. The light flickered a little, and I saw the figure leave my room. The next morning, I woke up and told my mother. She seemed happy, almost excited, and cried out of happiness and told me that it's my father, or as she thought. A lot of small stuff has happened since then, and now, but another big one happened only a few weeks ago. My partner and I were laying down in bed watching a movie, and she tells me, "Baby, I think there's something under the stairs moving." We get up to go investigate as we hear stuff moving, and I open the door to nothing, but we can hear stuff moving still. The smaller part is at the back where the sounds are coming from, and I know from just the sound of it, it's the box of family stuff. pictures, medals, books and toys, etc. And it always came to me. It's my father trying to communicate, and he's always seemed to be looking out and after me. But this is all I have to share. So last week, we spent a week with my fiance's family at my mother-in-law's house. Everything was fine when we got there, but on the second day that we were there, her grandmother tells us that a couple was murdered in the house several years ago. They even showed me the article for it later in the week. I'm torn because I really want to share the article, but it includes a picture of the house which would essentially dox them, and I don't want to do that. So I'm intentionally being vague on location details. Anyway, this was creepy, but not a huge deal. But she told us this because her, my fiance's grandmother, and my fiance's uncle had both seen things in the house. One being at a time where the chandelier in the dining room was swinging, and when Grandma rebuked it in Jesus' name, it stopped, and my uncle-in-law saw it. Another time, they saw a woman walk out of my mother-in-law's bedroom, turn around and walk back in. But my mother-in-law wasn't home. Again, Grandma and Uncle Manny saw it. But we were all kind of skeptical because no one else in the house had any experiences. So on the third night, my fiancée was complaining that she needed to go to the bathroom upstairs, but it was dark. We were staying in the basement. So I offered to go with her, but she had to go with me outside to get our charger out of the car that we left. It was really dark outside too, and I didn't want to go alone. Side note, my sister-in-law and her stepdad left earlier in the day to go visit family, and had been gone for a while. So about 20 minutes before we decided to go upstairs, 4 of the dogs in the house started barking, so we assumed they had gotten home. So we head upstairs, and my fiancée has her phone light on. And when she opens the door, we notice the sink light in the kitchen is on, which is usually off at night. But again, we attributed it to her stepdad being home. So when you open the door from the basement, you enter pretty much in between the kitchen and the living room. Kitchen to the left and living room on the right. And there's a dining room across from the basement door on the other side of the wall. So you can walk into the living room, then turn left into the dining room, then turn left into the kitchen. So it's essentially a circle. With that established, onto the encounter. When she opens the door, I'm still a few steps behind, so I'm about eye level with the floor. And I see a pair of legs facing away from us in the living room, and then turn and walk into the dining room. We walk to the top of the steps, and I notice it's really quiet, and I wait for whoever was there to come around the corner. But after a second of hearing nothing and seeing no movement, my brain went into denial mode, and I started to think I was mistaken and hadn't seen anyone. Until my fiancée says unprovoked, "I'm not crazy, I just saw someone," which I immediately confirmed that so did I. So we thought that maybe her stepdad was messing with us because this is something he would do. So we give out a couple hellos before my fiancée goes to the living room on the right, and I stand in the kitchen. So if he was hiding around the corner, he would have to pass by me to get away. But she confirmed my fears and said, "There's no one here." I triple check by going around the other way and also confirm that no one is in the room. I'm Christian and always thought in that situation I'd be some mighty prayer warrior and rebuke any spirit. But instead, I squeaked out a cheeky, "In Jesus' name," before we booked it into her mom's room and woke her up to tell her what we saw. We eventually went to the bathroom together, prayed in the bathroom together, rushed to get the chargers and hurried back to the basement, where we woke her sister up in the next room and told her what happened. We prayed again, went back upstairs, grabbed some water, and prayed again in the living room. Ended the night back in the room, watching The Office to try to lighten the mood so I could fall asleep. My fiancée confirmed that she saw was a man's full figure with a white shirt and shorts, who had his back to us, then turned and walked into the dining room, which was consistent to what I saw from the knees down. So yeah, that's my story. If it wasn't for also seeing it with the person I trust the most, I think I would have immediately rationalized it away. And even after having a witness, I still second guess it sometimes. But it was a crazy experience and very surreal. This sleep paralysis occurred about 5 years ago, and it was the first time I ever experienced it. I would go on to have sleep paralysis on and off for the next couple of years, and those experiences I can find reason with and explain. But I cannot fully reason and explain this experience. So to get on with it, about a year before I had this experience, I would frequently see the number 323. It would be 323 time. On a receipt, in a phone number, just anywhere you could think of. I kept seeing this number. I didn't take notice immediately, and when I did, I dismissed it, because it didn't mean anything at the time. It was a number I oddly kept seeing. The night I had this experience was just like any other night. I remember opening my eyes and just laying there. I didn't need to pee or turn, move, or flip to get comfortable, if that matters. I'm just laying there half awake when I begin to feel like something is in the room behind me. I wasn't scared, just confused as whatever was there shouldn't be there. After a few seconds of laying there confused and half awake, I was hit with this feeling of impending doom. Like I was going to die and there was nothing I could do about it. I was still waking up and processing all of this, so I didn't freak out yet. A few more seconds had passed when I felt some sort of pressure on my side, like something pushing down, and then I felt something odd in my ear. That was when I woke up fully and tried to move and realized I couldn't. After some attempts at moving and nothing happening, I gave up. I think that feeling of doom got to me. I then felt my head dip a bit below into my pillow. Within a few seconds, it was over. I immediately got out of bed and out of my room and sat in the living room. When I looked at the digital time, it was 3:23 a.m. I was shook, and I still am. I still don't know what to make of this experience, but I believe there was more to it than just sleep paralysis. I believe something was in my room, and I don't know why it was there or what it was. I've forgotten the feeling that came over me that night, but I remember at the time, I thought it was evil. I was wisely using my time last week and browsing TikTok. I saw some guy saying, the next time you're dreaming, you're aware that you're dreaming. Ask the people in your dream what the time or the date is. The people in the comments were saying stuff like, the people in their dreams, stating they were in the future or something like that. I thought that was cool and didn't think much of it afterwards. Fast forward to last night. I'm dreaming, doing my sleep thing, and I become aware that I'm dreaming. So I asked the people in my dream what the date and time is. They turn into black shadows and their eyes go red and they say that I'm not supposed to ask that question. So obviously that wakes me up and I'm 1000% awake. I have an awful feeling that someone's looking at me, so I try to go back to sleep, but damn, I had to pee. I close my eyes, go downstairs with my eyes shut the whole time, pee and come back upstairs. At this time I feel like I'm awake enough, so I open my eyes. And I'm still laying in bed somehow. So I go downstairs and put some water on my face. I'm awake. I take my temperature just to make sure that I'm okay. And my temperature is 101. At this point, I'm convinced that I'm just having a fever dream and I go back upstairs. It's just my husband in the bed, and so I lay down and go back to sleep. In the morning, he wakes up and goes downstairs to shower. I follow shortly afterwards and go pee and talk to him about my crazy dream last night. He tells me that's absolutely crazy and has me take my temperature. It's still 101. I feel like that can't be right because I feel fine. Suddenly, I'm awake in bed. And the exact same scenario of my husband waking up and going downstairs and me following him continues to happen multiple times. The last time it happened, at the part where I took my temperature, my fever had broken and I was at 97 degrees. My husband swore up and down that was the only time I had taken my temperature that day. Anyways, I've been questioning whether I'm awake or asleep all day, and I've come to the conclusion that the only time I can make sure I'm awake is when I take my temperature and I don't have a fever. Any logic that can make my anxiety go down would be appreciated. As a small child, I would see an old man every night. He looked like a farmer in a t-shirt and bib overalls, but they hung on him, as did his skin. Like he was just skin and bones, and he wore some kind of small-billed hat. He glowed green. Every night he would walk out of my parents' room and across the landing that served as my and my twins' room, and down the stairs. I never felt scared or like he was bad. I always just watched him do the same thing. Him never noticing me. Every night except one. One night, as his face was level with mine, he turned his head and looked at me. I wasn't scared, but I did feel as though I had gotten caught doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing. He turned around, walked back up the stairs, and came to stand next by my side of the bed. I wasn't scared, but shut my eyes and pretended to be asleep anyway, like I would if my mom caught us talking after we were supposed to be asleep. I was 4 years old, and we only lived there a year or less, but I remember a lot of weird shit that happened in that house. Fast forward to when I was 12 and asking my mom if she believed in ghosts. She did, and asked me if I did. I told her that I did, and related the above story. My mom blanched white, as if she had just seen a ghost. I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "That's JJ." And then she told me the following. When my older sister was 3 and my mom was pregnant with my next sister, they're 9 and 6 years older than me, she lived in a very small house miles from town in central Nebraska. Her husband was at work with their only car. It was sunny that day, but the weather changed quickly in the afternoon and worried my mom. The sky got ominous, the wind whipped up, and Mom grabbed my sister and took shelter in the cellar. It was loud above them, like a freight train, with the wind banging all around. My sister started wailing. She actually still hates storms. My mom, a scared 17-year-old herself, began looking around for something to distract my sister. The first box she opened had a beautiful angel in a clear box, a Christmas tree topper. My wailing sister grabbed the box and became quiet as she gazed at the angel. They sat, my mom with my sister on her lap, both looking at the angel as the storm noises faded and then stopped. They stayed down there a few hours, poking through the boxes of the previous tenants, before my mom was brave enough to venture back upstairs. She said, "I don't know anything about tornadoes. I don't know if or would come back or not." As she came out, she saw only one shutter had been knocked loose on the house. Corn wasn't very tall yet, and she could see the nearest neighbour walking toward her through the path of destruction left by the tornado. They assured each other safety and continued to follow the path. It seemed the tornado had been aimed straight for a little farmhouse when it abruptly changed directions, etched a half circle around the house, and then finished off another quarter mile on its previous heading. Like a straight line with a 50-yard semicircle around the farmhouse. Neither she nor the neighbour could believe her luck. She says the angel protected her, and we used that topper on our Christmas tree every year of my childhood. Fast forward a few more years, and my mum is living in a different state with the same husband and my sisters. Side note, my mum married her first husband at 13 and a second husband at 17 because he said he'd pay for a divorce to the abusive first husband if she agreed to marry him. She only liked him like a brother, but took the deal and married him, and she had no other means to get away from her abuser. Apparently, the poor South in the 1960s was a fucked up place to grow up. She never loved her second husband, but he was a kind man who loved her very much. She knew a woman while she lived there who claimed to be a medium and clairvoyant. That woman told her, Mom says without knowing anything about her, that she had a guardian angel that she had picked up at a farmhouse, his farmhouse. He had died in the farmhouse during the Great Depression, of starvation. His name was JJ. She also told my mom that she hadn't met her true love yet, but that she would, and his initials would be SDS. A few months later, she got the courage to divorce again, and a few years later, she had a fling with a guy that resulted in her being pregnant with twins. Myself and my twin. My dad's initials are SDS. They got married when we were 5. Some things just feel like more than a coincidence. I had never heard the story about the medium before that day. In fact, she had never told anyone because she didn't want the ribbing she'd get for it. My mom had always spoken of a guardian angel, but never by name. I always assumed she met her Christmas tree topper because I did know that story. I was out in the garden with a friend when my partner, we'll call him Bob, called our dog. Let's call him Spot. Spot started running towards his name and then stopped dead in his tracks. In the same amount of time it took Spot to hear his name and run a few steps, I thought, Bob is calling Spot. I wonder why. Wait, was that Bob? The last thought coming just as Spot stopped with one front leg raised mid-step. My friend and I looked at each other, eyebrows raised. Did you just hear that? I asked. Yes, it was Bob calling Spot, my friend replied, a bit dubious. You see, Bob was about 100 yards away last I knew, and his voice seemed to come from closer and to the right of where I thought he was. Feeling something was off, I yelled, Bob, did you call Spot? He responded, what? From where I had thought he was, and because he's a bit hard of hearing. Trying to be heard, I yelled, did you call Spot? To which he replied, Spot? Thinking I was asking him to call the dog. Instantly, Spot takes off, running to Bob. My friend and I look at each other with more eyebrow raising and agree that that was weird. 10 minutes later, when Bob joined us in the garden, I asked him if he called Spot. He said, yeah, you told me to. I said, before I yelled at you. He said no, and he thought it was weird that I was asking him to call Spot. I told him what happened, and he immediately guessed that it was a raven mimicking him calling our dog. Then I was dubious, assuming a raven wouldn't sound exactly like him, or enough like to fool myself, my friend and Spot. Also, we've never heard the ravens talk before. Fast forward 3 weeks when I mentioned to my friend, in a group of people, how I've never been creeped out at our place before, but that I can't stop thinking about that. He says, me too. Then suddenly remembering, he turned to Bob and said, earlier today, when you walked up the hill, did you call for Nick? Referring to his partner who was also visiting. Bob said, no, I don't think I ever called for Nick. My friend then relates a similar story to the first one. Hearing Bob call for Nick, but not from where he thought Bob should be. Feeling doubtful and then going to find Nick to see if he heard it too. He hadn't. This happened outside. We live in a fairly remote place in Northern California. National Forest borders 3 sides of our property, and we have neighbours to the north of us. None of our neighbours are close enough to hear, and they don't sound like Bob. I looked into corvids as we have many, including ravens and Stella jays. The first one could be explained by this. Bob calls Spot often enough that it's not too far-fetched a corvid could be mimicking that. The second one is a bit harder for everyone involved to swallow. Bob hasn't said Nick's name very often on our property, mostly just in the last week, and they've been visiting and certainly not calling it. I also looked into cryptids. I was told once that the natives believed an entity lived on the mountain I now live on. I wasn't told much, just that it was neither good nor bad, but that the natives stayed well away from there.